And regular viewers know that our motto here is the numbers matter, and one number that certainly matters is raising eyebrows. 7 million. That's the number of Americans who are at least 90 days late on a car loan payment, according to a report this week from the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank of New York. To see why that number matters, let's pull back and look at some perspective. The report authors point out that 7 million car notes over 90 days past due is a full million above the number of past dues in 2010, when the United States was still reeling from the wreckage of 2008's crash. Savvy market watchers will note that the car payment metric can serve as a proxy for economic desperation, as workers who drive to their jobs understandably prioritize payment on the key item they need to get to work for getting paid. And here to discuss is the delinquency, and whether or not these things are really warning flashers for credit and for our economy, and the impact of the new tax law in the United States, is a professor of economics emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, Professor Richard Wolff. Welcome back, Professor. Good to see you again.
Glad to be here, Mike.
So I recall back in 2014, Professor, there was all this speculation about what was the next bubble. Was it auto loans? Was that the next thing to burst? And it sort of went out of fashion and out of the headlines, although we've raised it a few times on the program here. But today, there's this new news out of the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank of New York, which has some warning flashers turned on. The Fed says that those 7 million total are at least 3 months delinquent on the loans, and that's really high. What do you make of it, and does it concern you?
It concerns me enormously, as it does the Federal Reserve, and as it does to everyone not snowed under by these arguments about the so-called recovery. Have we recovered from 2008? Yes. But it's been one of the most unbalanced recoveries from a crisis of capitalism we've ever seen. The folks at the top have been doing very, very well. But the mass of people, even if they get a job finally, get a job with lower income, less security, fewer benefits, and you're seeing the results. If it were just the unpaid car loans, it would be one thing. But we're seeing it everywhere. Credit card debt is high. Students are unable to pay back the debts they've had to accumulate to pay for college. The headlines keep telling us that the mass of people are in very serious economic trouble. And the slightest downturn is going to take us over the edge, a little bit like the downturn in the subprime mortgage market back in 2007 proved to be the last straw. It is a reality that our economic system is distributing goods and bads in a very uneven way, and that makes the whole system sitting on a very dangerous foundation.
And so I want to ask one more question about car loans before we get to taxes, and that is, and we may have a chart on age distribution of these car loans, but I mean, obviously the folks who aren't paying, they don't have the money to pay, as you're saying, because of the economy, what have you. But if they don't have a vehicle, they can't get to work, so they can't afford anything else, their mortgage payment, et cetera, et cetera. So do you think, Professor, that auto loans, or the lack of repaying auto loans, is a proxy for what's going on in the greater economy? Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely, because a person who can't pay the car loan, especially if he or she needs it for their job, and most Americans live in places where to get your food, shopping done, to go to the job, to take your kids to school, all of these things require a car. It's not a luxury in many places, it's an absolute necessity. If they're not paying for that, you have to understand it probably means they're postponing a visit to the doctor, hoping they can get by without it. And as every medical doctor will tell you, the longer you wait, the bigger the risk that it'll be a big, expensive sort of thing. They're economizing everywhere. They're not going to paint the house when it really needs it. They're not going to do this. They're not going to do that. It's a system that wants to pretend everybody's fine, but underneath it, the very foundation is being removed. That's why this statistic about car loans is yet another canary in that famous coal mine, letting us know we better deal with the underlying reality, or else it's going to bite us in a very bad way and pretty soon.
Well, we'll keep watching that number. It certainly matters. We appreciate you lending your expertise. I want to shift to taxes. There's some more new news out today about initial data from the Internal Revenue Service here in the States, the IRS, which shows that tax refunds are lower than last year by 8.4%. 8.4%. The Treasury Department says, whoa, 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 it's too early to tell the whole tale. But according to President Trump and those who passed the new tax law, people were supposed to get a tax break. That doesn't appear to have occurred for average people, at least not yet. What's your take, Professor?
Well, you know that the tax writing process is a situation everybody has to understand. You get the headline, taxes were reduced, and that's what indeed happened back in December of 2017. But what you don't get any information about, unless you're a real specialist, are all the little adjustments of the taxes. And that's where the lobbyists who come in for the energy companies, for the pharmaceutical companies, for all of the different players, they get a little change in the tax law that helps them. This other group gets one for them. And then when they finish doing it all, it turns out that these adjustments also impact the average person. And when all the dust clears, the cut in the taxes you thought would bring you a refund gets offset by the consequences of all the little deals cut by the lobbyists you don't know and whose behavior you can't follow. And now you're seeing that in an economy as stressed as ours, who cuts the deals in Washington? The well-paid lobbyists from the well-paid corporate leadership. That's what determines the final outcome. And now everybody's shocked by what you could have predicted once you understood how tax laws get written.
You're so right. And you may know this statistic, Professor, but I used to use it all the time in my speeches. For every single member of Congress, the House and the Senate, so 535, there are 10 lobbyists in the financial sector. 10 for every single one of those 535. And when you talk about people that represent consumers, we probably have all of them on this program. I mean, there's like, I don't know, 10 of them or something. There's more than 10, but not that many more. So the deck is stacked against them, right?
Yes, and you're seeing, I mean, there are many consequences, but one of them is that now we're seeing that when you put together all the little deals made by all the lobbyists with their favorite congressman or woman or senator, when you put that against the so-called tax cut that got all the attention, you end up with more taxes to pay rather than the big refunds you were led to expect. It's really a very cruel, unfair way of handling something as important as the tax system of the United States.
Professor, it's always so enlightening to speak with you. Sometimes it's maddening, but only because you're giving us the straight scoop, and we sure do appreciate it. Professor Richard Wolff, thanks as always for your time and expertise, sir.
Thank you as well.